one of the teams that the team I feel made a considerable amount of progress in 2022. Definitely started out in a shit box. Made progress throughout. Definitely, Lewis paid some heavy dividends in trying to do and help for the car development. What do you see going forward next season for not only car development for Mercedes, but the potential contract for Lewis? And if so, what do you see that line being, that horizon being for Lewis? But first, the car development. Do you even expect the W14 or whatever they're going to call it to be in the similar or even same form as this season? And if not, what do you think will happen?
Mercedes absolutely started the season on the back foot. And it was so much of the case that not only did they have a major problem that they had identified right away, they're saying, hey, this porpoising problem is an issue. It's holding us back in terms of performance. Not only did they have that problem, but they remedied that to a great degree in Spain. And then they got to Baku the week later or 2 weeks later and realized they had a totally separate problem, this bouncing problem and bottoming problem that was actually totally distinct from the porpoising problem that was also costing them performance and potentially Lewis Hamilton is back. Right. And this is one of those things where I think Mike Elliott described it as they were just peeling back layers of an onion. They just kept going and kept going. And every time they pulled something back, there was something else. And there was so many things that they had no idea about. And these are all symptoms of to use an inelegant term, an undercooked concept. Okay. Right. There was a very ambitious idea about how to attack the 2022 regulations. There was limited resources. In fact, the most limited resources of any team because they won the 2021 Constructors Championship. They had less CFD items, less wind tunnel man hours available to develop an already ambitious concept. You could argue one of the things they could have done would have been to just back off a little bit on the ambition of the design concept, precisely because you don't have extra resources. You don't even have resources that are on a par with everyone else. You actually have less resources than everyone else. So it's two things happening together. You have less resources than everyone else, and your concept is arguably more ambitious than anyone else. I would argue that it was. And they almost made it work. Right? They almost made it work. But the important thing is, as you said, they developed that car so much over the course of the season, and there are certain aspects of the design that are immutable, that can't be changed, and they were still able to work around those and still build performance. What was impressive to me about that is Ferrari was winning races right out of the box. Right out of the box, they were competitive with Red Bull. But as the season went on, it wasn't just driver errors. It wasn't just reliability. It wasn't just poor strategy calls that was throwing away wins for them.
Right.
Towards the second half of the season, they were actually lacking race pace. They had great qualifying pace. They were always there in qualifying. But they didn't have the race pace. But Mercedes actually did, on average. I mean, Abu Dhabi is a little bit an outlier towards the end of the season, but on average, on the second half of the season, the team that was actually fighting Red Bull wasn't Ferrari. It was Mercedes. And we know that the Red Bull car had gotten faster over the course of the season.
Right.
It was overweight. It was probably the most overweight car of any car on day one of the season. And they were finally getting down towards the weight limit towards the end of the season. And that combined with whatever effects of technical directive 39 and the aerodynamic oscillation metric, the AOM metric to try to stop the porpoising, those things together just made Red Bull incredibly fast and Ferrari not nearly as fast.
No.
And the only team that was actually able to take it to Red Bull towards the end of the season was Mercedes. So I would argue that Mercedes being able to fight a latter half of the season Red Bull is actually more impressive than a Ferrari that could fight an early half of the season Red Bull. Because that second half of the season Red Bull is way faster.
Yeah, good point.
It's way faster. So I think that not only is Mercedes in a situation where they have the absolute pace to be able to compete, but the level that they were competing at is actually represents a faster car than what Ferrari started the season at. And I don't want to say that Ferrari flattered to deceive, so to speak, but part of Ferrari's competitiveness owes to Red Bull itself and them struggling to get on their own feet. As I said before, car was overweight. They had reliability problems in the first couple of races, and then they really started to come together towards the latter half. So in terms of car development, yes, Mercedes is probably going to be in a very strong place. Not only did they learn critical information about the design direction of the new car,
Okay.
but equally important, if not more important, they learned how to find that information. They learned how to find information when they are totally lost.
Right.
And they've never been more lost in the last 10 years than they were now. Even when they weren't winning.
Right.
Even when they weren't winning in 2010 and in 2011 or whatever, I think they still had a better feel for what was going on than just being totally flabbergasted at the beginning of the season. So Mercedes is an incredibly strong team. There's a reason why they're 8 times champions and all the rest, and I think they'll come back strong, whatever they decide to do. With respect to Lewis is an interesting character. We look at Fernando, we look at Sebastian. We saw Sebastian in the latter half of his career towards the end. Maybe the reflexes weren't quite as sharp. Maybe the wheel-to-wheel wasn't as great. We asked questions about, does he still have the ultimate pace? No one's really asking those questions about Lewis, even though he started before Seb did. Only a few races to clear it, yeah, but Lewis, by all means, should already be deep into his decline by age, right?
Right.
He's not a spring chicken anymore.
Right.
Lewis is a little bit long in the tooth in terms of drivers. Many other drivers who were younger than him lost their competitiveness faster than him. He is still, as an elder statesman of Formula One, able to go wheel to wheel with the youngest, fastest guys on the grid, Verstappen among them. So Lewis is, and I said this before, and I want to be clear, I'm saying this as affectionately and respectfully as I can. But Lewis Hamilton's a freak. Okay, Lewis Hamilton's a freak.
Right.
He's a freak in not in the sense of some sort of deviant, but
in nature,
his existence is singular.
Yes,
there is not something that preceded it that would explain why he is as good as he is, and I doubt that anyone will come after him that will have the same type of impact that he had or have the same type of profile as a driver. I mean, he's a beast,
right.
And it's almost inexplicable what his abilities actually are. And I think one of the things that people are sort of, thinking about, and who's the next big driver, and Verstappen was given a championship once and he actually won a championship a second time. Does that make him better than Lewis Hamilton? I'm like, not really.
No.
I mean, when you get to 5 championships, we can start talking, first of all. But secondly, there's a huge age disparity there. Verstappen, by all rights, should have much better reflexes and much better, everything. But Lewis can still go toe to toe with him,
True.
and which is incredibly impressive. So I say all of this as preface to give my explanation for what I think Lewis is going to do. I think he's going to buck the trends of what a driver is capable of. He is here in Formula One not because he wants the money, not even necessarily because he wants an 8th championship or anything else. To come back to this sport after what it did to him in Abu Dhabi 21, to come back from that is a labor of love. He loves driving, he loves racing, and he's doing it because he loves it. Right. And so I think that motivation is perennial to a degree. It will last for a long time.
Right.
And I don't see any immediate reason why it would stop. It's not like he's racing and then this is distracting him from his social activities or his movies going or whatever. He's doing all that too. Right. he never stopped doing that.
None of that.
So it's not like he is sacrificing some second or third life because he's racing. He's already doing both of these things. So that's also not something that's weighing on him in terms of shortening his career. I also know that this is a deeper point. The one thing that Lewis Hamilton fears the most in many situations is he does not want to leave Formula One and be known as the only black driver in Formula One.
Right.
That is something that he deeply does not want to happen. And if his position and his perception is that by staying in the sport longer, by providing other people with opportunities, by supporting them, he can help bridge that gap, that's also a reason to stay beyond all the other reasons we've already discussed. So I don't know what he's going to do, but I think that he has it in him to race for many more years than people are giving him credit for.
I believe that too. Thanks for watching another episode of Wolfpack Performance. Don't forget to check out some of my other content on Formula One and motorsports topics. Like, share, subscribe, and we go live on the weekends. See you soon.